Hi guys, this is Michael Womax from Dodge City High School, and this is my case study for Mod 16 for Ed Finance. The case is this: George Washington Middle School has a single principal. They had a last basketball game of the year. $50 went missing from the gate, and and one of the people working the gate, Mrs. Bowman, had an issue with Mr. Stevens a few days earlier because he had not approved for money to be used from the PTA fund for her daughter to be able to go to New York for an all-state cheer parade. Mrs. Bowman also told Mr. Stevens when giving him the money that she had thrown away 10 tickets because they had been torn. What we know, Mr. Stevens is the only administrator at the school, and thus he's the only administrator present to supervise at the event, which was completely full. It was at capacity. Recently, Mrs. Bowman had requested for her daughter's cheerleading trip to be funded, and that did not happen. Mr. Stevens denied it. He told her that the only reason that money should be used from the PTA is to be funding for all students, not just for an individual student. We know that Mrs. Bowman was in charge of taking money for tickets at the event, the basketball game, and we know that $50 of that is missing. She stated that 10 tickets got thrown away because they were torn, but we also know that Mr. Stevens had a conversation with a parent, Mr. Dumas, who told him that he had paid with a $50 bill, which, when going through the money, a $50 bill was not present in the cash. What we need to know. I think we need to be sure that Mr. Dumas paid with a $50 bill. I think that's something that we can ask him again or ask the person that was working with Mrs. Bowman, and that's something that we need to know too. We also need to know who counted the money when turning in the report from the table, whether she did it herself or if they did it together, who cross-checked that before turning it in to the principal. The problem is that $50 is missing from gate revenues. 10 tickets were reported torn and discarded, which matched perfectly with the $50. We also know there could possibly be a loss of trust with Mrs. Bowman, depending on the investigation that's made, what will happen because of that. The main problem, though, is that money's gone missing from an account that's supposed to be used to help better our kids with education. My plan of action as a principal: first thing I would do is question the person working alongside Mrs. Bowman, but this would need to be in a non-threatening way. We need to not assume that the money is stolen in any way when talking with anyone. We need to assume that there's just been a mistake made and that it's been lost somehow, or we didn't sell as many tickets as we said we did. We need to go in non-threatening with all of these and assume that no money's been stolen. We just need to try and rectify the problem. We need to do the same thing with Mrs. Bowman if we don't find anything out from the person that helped. And my other plan of action is to rethink the procedures for handling money at events. As the principal, I need to be there when these final tallies are made. It needs to be done together with the people at the concession stand, going through inventory and making sure the money matches up, as well as with the tickets, going through inventory, making sure the money matches up there. Another thing that I would do is I would have students help with the concessions and with the gate. It's really not easy, but a grown-up, an adult, is going to be more likely to steal something if it's just them by themselves. But if there's a kid there, they're not going to do that. What's best for students? We need to produce a solid procedure that prevents this from happening again. And I think the procedures right now are very difficult because I, as the principal, need to be there when the money and inventory gets counted and as a final. If we do find a guilty party, we need to have them pay that money back to the fund, because the money's meant to benefit our students. It's not something personal between me and the parent. That money goes towards the students of this middle school. Another thing that needs to be done that's best for students: Mr. Stevens and Mrs. Bowman need to rectify their relationship, because Mrs. Bowman has had kids go through the school. She has a daughter still in 7th grade right now that's going to be in 8th grade next year. it's going to be tough for me as a principal to have a good relationship with that girl if her mom is has a personal issue with me. My thoughts and feelings when reading this and thinking through what I would do as a principal. My first thought was obviously that I need to be there when the money gets counted, if we're having issues with that. This would have made that situation much less of an issue, because if I'm there and we are $50 short or whatever, we can be like, oh well, we screwed up here, or this got messed up, so that's probably what happened. But if I'm not there, it's really easy for me, first of all, to assume guilt, and second, it's easier for somebody to get away with stealing something. Another question, another thought that I had was I questioned whether Mrs. Bowman was holding a grudge against Mr. Stevens for not approving her daughter's trip to New York, and maybe she did it just out of spite. I feel like at the school, we need to hire someone to be able to help the head principal with supervising responsibilities at these activities that they're a part of. We don't necessarily have to hire an assistant principal. I'm assuming that we can't afford to hire an assistant principal right now, or we would already have one. But we could just hire a teacher or a counselor or a secretary, somebody to help with supervising during an event like this, especially when it was at capacity and there was a lot of people there. It's very difficult for one person to be able to handle all of that in one day. Some of the unresolved issues that we have, we don't know why the money's missing. In the case study, it didn't tell us exactly what happened. We don't know why it's missing. We don't know if it was theft or a mistake. We don't know. We also don't know for sure that Mr. Dumas, the parent, paid with a $50 bill. He said that, but maybe he didn't. Maybe he just paid with a 5 and he had a 50 and he found a 5. I don't know. We don't know that for sure. We don't know if there's somebody that can back up his story. We also don't know how Mrs. Bowman feels towards Mr. Stevens, the head principal, right now. And we don't know if she could have possibly taken the money out of spite, or if she just took the money because she wanted to steal $50. We don't really know for sure what happened. As a school leader, in terms of promoting effective and efficient management of the school, I think the principal, Mr. Stevens, had a tough job on that night. His gym was full, and he had to supervise out in the gym. He had to supervise concessions. He had to supervise ticket taking. With just being one person, it's really tough for him to do that. And I think he needs to be able to, at the end of the evening, or maybe in like the third quarter, or whenever they start shutting down the concessions and the ticket taker, he needs to go be there to make sure that the money gets counted and there are no issues. They need to be able to do that on the spot, not just bring him that stuff later at the end of the game. In a situation like this, I think as a school leader, you have to be very, very careful with how you handle it. We can't be accusatory of someone when something like this happens, even if we have a good idea of what happened. We can't go into it saying, hey, I think you did this. We have to question people along the lines of, hey, this was missing. Do you know what might have happened to it? Not to assume that the money's stolen, but to assume that a mistake got made. But if you go in talking to somebody accusatory, even if they're not guilty, they're immediately going to put a wall up and they're going to be defensive about it. And the third thing was we need to be able to make plans so that this can be more efficient. And I think it starts with hiring someone to help with supervising. And that doesn't have to necessarily be every single game, but like, a basketball game at the end of the year where there's going to be a lot of people there, maybe we should have some other people. Maybe a cross-country meet, one person might be enough because there probably won't be as many people there. Concessions and gates will probably not be as much of an issue as something like that. As a school leader, in terms of promoting social learning for every student, I think that being able to trust people you work with or work for allows you to be more relaxed. So for me, if I'm able to trust the people that I'm working for or that are working for me, I'm going to be a better principal. I'm going to be able to adhere more towards the needs of the students. Being good with the budget and being able to give kids everything you can out of every dollar. Just a simple fact that $50 means something, other than just for, pride of, oh, you stole money, but it legitimately means something too. This is $50 that we can use for our kids to help them have a better experience in school and become better people and better learners, so that when they do go to, high school, they're going to be better prepared for that. And I think the last thing I did to help with social learning is having kids help. Having kids help run the concession, having kids help work the gate. That's going to help kids being able to do that stuff, being able to have conversations with people, asking them what they need, being able to welcome them into the gym, as a ticket taker, being able to make that experience good. That's definitely something that kids could benefit from socially. Thirdly, academic learning for our kids. I think allowing kids to be a part of it is a big thing. For them to help with the reconciliation process, before the money goes to the bank, that's a good thing for them to do. Being able to help count, go through inventory, that's very academic in itself. Being able to have good, solid procedures is very important. We need to make sure our procedures are efficient and profitable. That way our kids can do more. If the more money we have, the more we're going to be able to do as a school and be able to better serve our kids academically. And thirdly, being able to have good relationships with people is so important as an administrator. For especially even Mrs. Bowman, I'm the head of the school. I know that I declined a request for some money for her, but I need to be able to have a good relationship with her because she's done a lot for us as a school recently over the last few years. She still has a daughter there. She's someone that can bring good things into our school, but relationships are just really important, and we need to be able to do that. Standards, I did MOS 1B, candidates understand and can monitor and evaluate management and operation systems. The educational leader will develop school operational policies and procedures. ES2A, that the leader will advocate for school policies and programs that promote equitable learning opportunities and student success. PSEL 9A, effective leaders institute, manage, and monitor operations and systems that promote the mission and vision of the school. And PSEL 10A, leaders seek to make school more effective for each student, teachers and staff, and families, and the community. Thanks, guys.